What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, some of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excellent and taking care of yourself. So, we've got ourselves a good one, don't we? We've got just an amazing, amazing time to be alive in ufology. I just watched the UFO Congressional hearing in its entirety from start to finish today. Now, I know I'm about 6 months late on it, but I had seen plenty of clips and the highlight reel millions of times. And I just wanted to see if there was something, because I figured there might be something in there that might be amiss. So I decided to go back in and listen. And what I wanted to talk today about is a couple of pieces from that congressional hearing, and most importantly, what they didn't really report in mass media was that Ryan Graves stated that he had a report from his time in the Navy as being a pilot for over a decade, that they witnessed a football-sized red cube come out of the ocean by a military installation and hover around the military base. So Ryan Graves was one of the three people in the UFO or UAP congressional hearing. He's the pilot, the Navy pilot, the younger. He's probably about the same age as Grush. I think they're both in their. Grush is 36. I think he's 36, and Graves, I believe he might be a little bit older than Grush. Age, no way, he can't be 28. No, that's not him. The pilot, baby. Apparently there's another Ryan Grace who's like a hockey player or something, I don't know. But anyway, what I thought was really interesting was that he talked about the fact that nobody reported this. Nobody reported this, and there was no method for reporting this. And that's what's going to be coming up in the next congressional bill, is that they're going to make this allowable to be tracked. See, one of the members of Congress asked him, why do you think it's been so easy for the government to conceal this and cover it up? Well, guess what? If you don't have a reporting database that's accessible to the public, how the hell are we ever going to get the information out? They covered it up. The government covered it up by hiring out these contractors like Boeing and, Lockheed, Skunk Works, and all of these other ones, Raytheon and all of them. And guess what? They don't have to report to FOIA requests. So the Congress is like, well, where's all these reports? Well, they're buried in these companies. And Grush even said it. He said that there are people within and outside of the government that are holding on to this information. And when drilled and asked about specifics, Grush would never give specifics because he wanted to keep that for the SCIF, which is like the secret compartmentalized facility that they go into, and they talk about, it's supposedly like this locked area where no information can get out once they're inside of it. So I don't know if it's like a Faraday cage or what, but they go into these buildings and they're like Loctite proof, so they can talk and not be heard by spying ears or whatever. But he said he had the information. He said he had a list of names that were hostile and friendly witnesses that he had a whole call sheet on. He also had a whole call sheet for all the businesses that worked for the government and were hiding this information and had it buried somewhere. The other really interesting thing was that, remember, there was three people on that dais. There was Grush, Graves, and Fravor, who was a commander in the Navy. Now, Fravor witnessed an account right off of his battleship that he commanded, and this was a UFO, USO, and that was his main contribution, was that he witnessed this, and then he knows kind of like a little bit of the inner workings, but nowhere near Grush. But what Fravor said was that, without the proper authority, a lot of this stuff gets ultra classified without needing to be. He stated that there was a video that somebody took with their iPhone of a UFO, and they took it and they put it as above top secret, like what do they call it? TCSS, like super top secret classification. And he's like, this stuff doesn't need to be super ultra classified, but when they put it in to that level of security, it goes into a locker and it can't be taken out. It can't even be FOIA requested because it has this classification. So he said it's easy to hide this stuff because if you give it a high enough classification, you can't get it through FOIA requests. So that makes it really disappointing in a lot of ways. But what I thought was really interesting about this red cube, football field size red cube that Graves talked about was the fact that, holy shit, nobody else talked about this? You're telling me that nobody else saw this? Nobody else reported it? The media didn't report it? Or if they got it, they chose not to report it? So why didn't this information come out? You know, probably about a year ago, I did a podcast about the old Saybrook blockheads, and the old Saybrook blockheads had a translucent square with a red circle in it, and they had like this like little gown, and they were like little entities. They were about 4.5 feet tall, and at the top was this red cube. Well, a red circle inside of a translucent cube, basically reflecting off of it, making the entire thing look red. Now, when I think about red, I'm thinking back to all the different cases I've ever heard of a red cube or a red spaceship, and I'm like, can this be real? Like, this just seems so far-fetched. It doesn't sound like, a triangle craft. It doesn't sound like a pyramid craft. It doesn't sound like a flying saucer. But I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking, okay, what else have I heard of that resembles this craft? Okay, I remember there was an episode on Gaia where Emery Smith talked about having to go take samples. This was his job. He was a laboratory tech. He did samples of all these different, beings, and they had to find out, the chemical composition of these like little strands of muscle off of aliens, or they'd have an entire alien body where they'd have to dissect a certain piece and put it into a box, and the box went to somebody that he had no clue of. But on one instance, he had to go into a chamber, into a room chamber, huge, like where they could keep a large aircraft. And he was guided down the hall with, a guide, and the guide brought him here, and he opened the door and he said, okay, here's your room. He was already given instructions to go cut out a piece of this craft. Okay, cut out a piece of the craft? How the hell are you going to do that? Okay, well, the cool thing is that he was already working on a body that resembled this craft, an alien body that was red in nature and kind of like gelatinous, he said. It was very soft and malleable, but it was a body nonetheless, so kind of like a Jell-O body. But the thing is that when he got asked to go take a piece out of this craft, he went in there, okay? He goes in, and guess what happens? When he goes into this room, there's this bell-shaped Jell-O mold-looking ship. When he gets in there, the thing looks translucent. He kind of see through it, and he sees that, okay, I got to go in here and take a piece out. So he goes in, and he has to go up into the middle of it just to make sure he gets a nice, good dissection. When he goes in there, guess what he finds out? He goes up in, and this thing is like beating like a heart. This thing has like an energy to it. It's not just a ship. It's not just a transportation device. He said this thing was living. He said he had to go in there and cut out a piece, and this thing, the closer and closer he got, the thing started to change colors. It got a little bit brighter, even though it was still red. And he thought it was so bizarre because when he cut a piece off of this craft, which he basically stated he did with a scalpel, he thought it was really interesting. He said, God, this thing looks exactly like the body I'm working on. Wait a minute. Let's go do some tests. Let's go back and do these tests on this cut off of this craft. And the craft and the alien body had the exact same composition. What the fuck? How's that happen? How's that work out? How the hell can you fly a ship based off of your body's chemistry composition? Well, I don't know the physics, but you can kind of jump to a conclusion and say, well, if you have the same composition as the ship, maybe you can communicate with it easier. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's great, but I don't know about us flying around in a ship that's made out of human skin. I don't know how that's going to work, and sounds a little bit like Silence of the Lambs to me, but hey, what do I know? So that's the story when it comes to red ships. You got the Jello mold ship that Emery Smith cut off a piece of, and it was the exact same chemistry composition, skin feel, texture, everything as this alien body he was working on. We have this 300 foot, 100-yard football field size stadium red cube craft that was seen off of the Pacific. And then you got what else? You got the old Saybrook blockheads from 1967. I think it was up in Connecticut or New Hampshire, somewhere in the upper East Coast. So all these weird, like reddish blocks are very bizarre that he talked about. And why didn't they talk about this? I mean, why didn't they come out into the press? You know, the only thing, they never used that clip ever in any highlight. The only clip that they really used from Graves was sometimes, and this wasn't the most popular one, but sometimes they used the clip that he talked about where they saw these translucent cubes with, or a translucent circle with a black cube inside of it. So translucent circle, it's like a circle that you can see through with a black cube inside instead of a red one, which makes it even more bizarre. Now they saw those all the time in the skies as fighter pilots, and they would basically brush them off. However, when they were on duty, or they were going out and doing practice runs, these things would be there all the time, and they would report them back, and people would be like, their commanders were like, we don't know what they are. They're not ours, and they weren't showing up on radar either. So they would see them physically. They would get as close as within 50 feet of the craft. That's the kind of testimony that we need, because that proves that whatever is up there, right? Whether it's a flying V, a flying saucer, a black cube and a translucent, a black square and a translucent cube, or a 300-foot red freaking football field size craft. These things, not necessarily they're horrible entities or anything like that, but if we don't talk about them, we don't know about them, they're definitely a threat to our pilots in the skies. And a lot of the pilots, including Grush and the commander, they were all asked by Congress, certain members of Congress, right, certain representatives, are these things a hazard or a danger to our national security? In not in like people freaking out or us giving out classified information. Are they a threat weapon-wise to our community? And they all said yes, yes, yes. All three of them answered yes, yes, yes. Okay, great. So now we got more information. Now we got more to go on. They're all saying that, yeah, this is a problem. Okay, so if you haven't seen this congressional hearing in its entirety, it's worthwhile. I know at the beginning, right, they give opening statements. It's a little boring. Okay, whatever. That's like the first 15 minutes. After that, it's pretty much good information after good information for about 2 hour and 45 minutes. The whole thing is about 2:15, something like that. So, of course, you have Burchett. Of course, you got Representative Luna, Moskowitz, and even Matt Gaetz. Really, all these guys did such a fantastic job in representing us as an American public to gather this information and make it more public. How much information and how long will it take before we get true disclosure? That's up for debate. But my father wanted to know for sure from the government, which I was like, dude, it's not going to happen, that there indeed are aliens and there indeed are UFO craft that the government is not telling us about. And we got that confirmation with this congressional hearing. So I called my dad up and said, hey, you haven't kicked the bucket yet. Dad's 76. And he's like, I'm like, did you hear the government came out and said there are aliens? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, it's last July. And so I say, you got to get on there and watch this congressional hearing. The reason I kind of stayed away from this topic on my podcast was because I kind of wanted to sit and wait it out and see what happened and see how much depersonalization they were going to do to all the witnesses and how much bashing they were going to do, and see if anything came back out and there was any, rebound effect. And there wasn't. There wasn't. I mean, Grush has been pretty much confirmed as saying who he is. Same thing with Graves. Same thing with Fravor. And all of the stories that they've come out and talked about have been legit. Now that we have this, the 6 months has gone by. Okay, great. Now we know. Now we also know that Grush had his little party in the penthouse and gave out his own little speech and specifically said that these things are extraterrestrial. I'm sorry, not extraterrestrial, interdimensional. I said that in the last podcast. I apologize. Interdimensional. Now, when you watch the congressional hearing, he actually says interdimensional. He says, I don't want to say extraterrestrial because that puts them into a box. And he said, you have to keep an open mind that there can be more to this than meets the eye kind of type thing. Well, now that opens up a lot of questions, right? Okay, can they be, like Greer said, can they be extraterrestrial and interdimensional? Can they be from another planet in our universe and simply travel here interdimensionally? Meaning their ship folds space-time and comes here. That's possible. But why does he keep focusing on the interdimensional fact? So that got me thinking. And that leads us into the next podcast, which I'm going to start in just a minute. And you're going to want to listen into it because it's damn good. So I'm going to hold you here. I'm going to let it stop. I'm going to let you think about what we already talked about. So keep in mind, right, this podcast was about the red football field size cube that people witnessed and Graves testified on off of the Pacific Ocean. So keep this in mind, a football field size in length. So if that's true, then these things can be from under the water and in bases. I mean, that's just the beginning, folks. And then we have Emery Smith's testimony about cutting off that piece on the bioship. I call it a bioship because it was basically it was part of his biology, the alien's biology. And then we have the old Saybrook blockheads. So, in summary, there's a lot to the congressional hearing that I think a lot of people didn't hear. And it definitely wasn't pushed into social media, wasn't pushed in a highlight reel. And I think it's really, really important because that was one of the biggest things that they said. One of the biggest things that was reported in this testimony was the fact that there was a true witness to a 300-foot football field size craft. Red cube. I mean, where do you hear about this stuff? Not me. I don't hear about those. I hear about little green men and flying saucers, maybe some reptilians, and maybe some Nordic stuff, and that's about it. On the Mantis, too. But whose ship needs to be the size of a football field? Whose ship needs to be coming out of the ocean? Whose ship needs to be seen? Because you know that they probably have invisibility cloaks. And were they trying to make a statement? A lot of people say that only if they're being seen are they really making a statement. The Phoenix Lights, they were making a statement. That thing was saying, hey, you guys have one of ours. We want it back. I think they're talking about one of their pilots. So keep that in mind. I'm going to start up the next podcast because it's a doozy, boy. It's a doozy, and it's going to blow your mind. So stay tuned. Take care of your physical, spiritual, emotional health. Follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care. Lockdown Universe is out.